Hey good people, this is Donna Meals, and that's who I am, that's what I do. This is a cooking version of Empowered Meals, and one of the things that I've kind of mentioned a few times was my little blueprint recipes. So I've chatted a few things up about my little spreaded salmon recipe, and I do some chicken tenders and such, but I think what I'm gonna do is go over one of these blueprint recipes, and then we're gonna do it two ways and apply it, okay? That'll kind of give you an overview of what I really mean by blueprint, okay? So here's my blueprint. I'll leave a link to it in the comments underneath, but basically this recipe is adequate to cover about a pound of protein, okay? We're gonna do a couple ounces of tofu. You could use that too, I'm sorry. Tofu, if you're gonna do anything like this, anytime you use tofu, you're really smart it's made out of soy. It's a soybean curd, and it really has no flavor. It usually takes on the flavor of whatever you do to it. Usually it's better fried because then it's easier to get the flavor into stuff. Or you might want to marinate it, and you want to use a pretty stiff, good strong marinade, because like I said, it's pretty bland. So, but for our purposes today, I'm just going to do some salmon and I'm going to do some chicken tenders. Okay, so about four 4-ounce pieces of salmon, or they could be 6 ounces. Recipes, they always tend to be exact, and I think I would rather impart just some good, smart, just common sense into, that's why we're doing the blueprint recipe, than worry about being exact. Like, I'm not a good baker. I mean, I can make some stuff, but I'm not like, this amazing baker, because I don't like being exact. I kind of like winging it. I like adapting to whatever the situation is, or whoever's coming, or whatever I'm doing. So that's kind of why I made these up. So the recipe, like I said, it goes for about a pound of protein. You can multiply this, do it a couple times, and then save whatever you use or you don't use. Throw it in a Ziploc bag. Make sure you mark what it is. Oh my God, I can't even tell you how many times I'm gonna open up my freezer and I have no idea what any of that stuff is. Because I was always very rushed, and that is a really important thing. Get a Sharpie and write down what that is. I'm Ziploc bag queen, because they don't take up much room. They're cheap. You don't have to wash dishes. Like I said, I go to Costco and buy cartons of those. And I use them a lot with my prepared food. It's just simple, easy. So this is a guideline. Blueprint recipes are guidelines. So this one in particular, you're going to use a cup of dry breading, and then you're going to use 1 to 2 tablespoons of butter, or quality coconut oil, some kind of oil. Okay, because butter, when you melt it, it's an oil too. So, and that's to get a moisture content into that dry breading. Okay, then you've got 1 to 3 tablespoons of what I call stock seasonings. Now, I mentioned this a couple episodes back. These are things like onions, leeks, shallots, anise, garlic. These are all those like little root vegetables that you can put in things. And I consider it seasoning, when you're cooking with different vegetables. But I would also kind of move that category over a little bit. And I would also say that you could add citrus in there. I mean, that's a wonderful flavor that you can add in. Sometimes people throw cheese or nuts into a recipe. That's going to help. I guess I call them blending flavors. Wine is one too. So all of these things can be a flavor as well as an element. Anything that's gonna be, aside from the herbs and spices, you know, anything that you can put in there that's going to help with the flavor of something. I just consider them, I call them stock seasonings, okay? And then your herbs and seasonings, I call showcase seasonings, because this, okay, for instance, this recipe that we're going to do, the salmon lemon thyme, well, guess what? The stock seasoning is, the one that's a little bit, you know, less pronounced, is lemon, because it's, you know, it's a pretty potent flavor. And the thyme is going to be the star of the show, okay? So when I do a seasoning in something, if I put herbs, like say I'm doing herbs, and the herbs in that we're going to use today are not only thyme, but I put some Italian parsley in there. And Italian parsley is kind of basic. You know, you use parsley a lot. It's kind of a less dominant flavor, but you never want to put just one. I don't want to say never, but you don't want to depend on one herb or seasoning, because it usually ends up being a little too overpowering. So it's nice to get that blend in there. So my showcase seasonings, herbs and spices, okay? Normally I put 1 to 3 tablespoons of herbs and 1 to 3 teaspoons of spices. Notice herbs would be tablespoons, seasoning, you know, or the spices would be teaspoons. Pardon me. A lot less needed for spices, because they tend to be much stronger. They just are. Herbs are a lot more mellow, so you can get away with using a lot more of them. It's kind of hard to OD on them unless you have one that's really potent. And, you know, you can tell that by smelling. You know, a lot of herbs just have a nice, lovely, light flavor. I think tarragon is probably my favorite. I love thyme. Thyme's good with fish. It's good with beef. Tarragon's great with fish, chicken. Any of these seasonings are great with vegetables and you know, more of a vegetarian kind of fare. So I always, pretty much every recipe, and I think I mentioned this before, I do at the end I write SPG to taste, and that's salt, pepper, and garlic. Now, sometimes pepper's going to be part of the show, so you don't really need to add that in with the SPG. Sometimes, you know, there's already fresh garlic in there, so you don't need to add. I'm sorry, salt, pepper, garlic, I usually mean granulated garlic. Forget garlic powder, it's way too fine. You can end up adding way too much of it. The further you grind something down, the more potent it becomes. That's why spices tend to be a little more strong, because they're ground down. You get a lot more in there, a lot more flavor than you really realize it. So you want to go easy with spices. You can always just add in a little less than what it says, and, you know, do a taste, see if you maybe like a little more, because you can always add in more. You just can't add in less. So, okay. So the recipe that we're going to go through here, that's just the basic breading recipe. Okay, so the baked salmon lemon thyme, right? I have this piece of salmon that I already, I got it at the store this morning, and I already kind of peeled the skin off. It's I cut it off. A lot of times at the market, they don't do that for you, you know. Sometimes this one actually has some bones in there, which I do not understand, but, you know, maybe somebody's running short on time or they missed it. So, but okay, so we're gonna start, and I'm gonna do, you know, this blueprint recipe, and I'm gonna plug it into this salmon, right? And it calls for a cup of breadcrumbs, okay? So I can't do breadcrumbs because I'm staying away from, not only am I staying away from gluten, but grains altogether. So I'm using the tiger nut flour. I think I mentioned that last week, that this is a go-to for me right now. But you could do half bread, you know, maybe you want to cut down on the carbs and the gluten, and you could go half breadcrumbs or panko. Many of you, panko's become a lot more prevalent these days. And it's basically breadcrumbs, but they're bigger, fluffier, Japanese style. So, you know, you get less of it's just a better texture. I like panko better than regular breadcrumbs. Regular breadcrumbs are kind of boring to me. And if you get the gluten-free ones, they can tend to be a little hard, you know, gluten-free breadcrumbs. I don't know. I would rather go with like a nut flour myself. And, you know, it adds extra great flavor in there too. So I take a little sip of my coffee. My tea that tastes kind of like coffee. I've been telling you guys about that. It's my little substitution. And if any of you are really, really listening and kind of getting my theme for the day, on Monday I talked intrinsically about substitution. I mean, when you're taking a recipe and you're really trying to eliminate certain things, substitution is really king. So just wanted to go over that again. So anyway, we need about a cup, right? So I'm going to pour that in there. So that's my dry ingredients. Okay, my cup. And I'm going to throw that in the old mixing bowl. My recipe blueprint then asks for 1 to 2 teaspoons of a melted, you know, an oil. So could be coconut, could be butter. I'm going to use butter because I'm going to do some fresh garlic in here too. So I like butter and garlic together. I think I already had some that was melted. I'm going to add that in there. Okay. All right. And then my next item in the recipe blueprint would be stock seasonings or the backup flavors. So, and I have examples here: fresh garlic, minced onion, shallot, citrus zest, cheese, chopped nuts. You know, that's what I was speaking about before. So we're gonna go with garlic, and in my little bowl here, I've got a garlic press. I don't know if you guys have ever used one of these, but they're magic. I cheat a lot and I buy the pre-peeled garlic. I hate peeling garlic. Anyway, so I've got like 4. I'm gonna do like 4 garlic cloves. This garlic press, I don't know, it's kind of lame. You kind of have to have 2 in the background to push the other 2 through. So I might have to use 6, but I'll have some left over. I don't know. Yeah, this is a lame. So anyway, the whole idea here, what I have on my deal is about a tablespoon of crushed garlic. So anyway, I've got about that. So there's about 4 total good-sized garlic cloves. I always mince them very fine, unless I'm doing a dish where I really want to taste like a little slice through that clove of garlic, or but a lot of times I use this because it's quick. So the other ingredient, the lemon zest. Okay, lemon zest. So simple as it. This recipe here, I use about actually the zest of almost a whole lemon. I like the little small in the grater. I have a little hand zester too. I just pulled this out. You just kind of want to get the very surface, get the yellow off there. It smells awesome. I actually got this from my mom's neighbor's tree. Now, you know what I'm going to do? That's the first thing you should do when you start cooking. Take off your rings. So that substitution thing, I just can't stress enough, you know, how smart that is. And there's so many products these days. Like this recipe, one of the other flavors that I'm gonna put in there, it calls for Parmesan. And I have this dairy-free Parmesan. Okay, so typically, I'll get back to that in a second. But all right, so typically on my, it says 1 tablespoon. That's a pretty good sized lemon. So I literally probably have 2, but that's what I'm saying. You just, I love this. I love the lemony in there. I'm gonna put it in there. If you're not as fond of lemon, maybe just do half or 3/4 of the lemon. Oh, what I'm gonna do too is, my little thing was in there. I'm gonna slice up a few, just a couple slices. Even though they don't have the rind on them, they're still gonna work. And I'm gonna use that as a garnish, keep that aside. Anyway, okay, so the next thing I was talking about was the Parmesan. Okay, so this is dairy-free Parmesan. This is a really good product. They make a lot of really good cheeses. I'm gonna do a little bit of cheat today because I really look forward to this, because this has some potato starch in here. The ingredients are water, organic palm fruit oil, modified potato starch. I mean, is this super healthy for you? I'm gonna say it's kind of one of those things that you're just putting it in there for your happiness healthy factor. Not necessarily that's got vitamins and whatever that's gonna be good for your body. But it's gonna help you create that yay, I'm happy, I like this, which sometimes you need. So I'm gonna go for it. I'm gonna put a little bit of this in here too. And this asks for 2 tablespoons. So I'm gonna go pretty generous. Okay, throw those in there. I don't measure anything. So, if you're really stressed about making sure everything's exact, more power to you. I just don't want to spend the time. That's just me. But then we're gonna come to, okay, so those were like your background flavors, the lemon, the Parmesan, the butter. But the butter actually was part of your, moisture content too. It's gonna help with this. All right, so I'm mixing that up a little bit as I go here. All right, so now what we want to do is put the herbs and spices in there. I don't particularly going to put any spices in here today. I'm just going to go with a couple herbs, thyme, and I'm going to put a little Italian parsley. All right, so I'm going to bunch this up and just cut off, it says, a couple tablespoons. And chop it a little more fine. Okay, and I'm going to just add that in there. Okay, and then for the thyme, I want to use about 2 tablespoons of the thyme too. But as you see, this comes on a little stalk. You don't want the stems, okay? So it's easier. I kind of like pull off the little top of the stem, and get to that piece where I can grab a little bit of the end piece here. Oops. Okay, and then just kind of pull it right off. So this is perfect time for this because these the stems are pretty solid, and so it's easier to do that. Sometimes you get this thyme and it's a nightmare. It takes forever because it's really wimpy. And so anyway, so I'm just gonna pull a few more off there. Okay, I've only done this about a million times, but I've got about, I keep going. We're gonna do, like I said, we're gonna do a similar thing. We're gonna just redo this with some other ingredients with chicken. Okay, so I've got my thyme, and again, this is one of those things you got to be really careful because you can go and buy some of this thyme and then look and it's pretty crappy underneath. So when you pick up your little thing of herbs, okay, always check in the kind of in the back there, the side a little too, just to make sure you're getting something that's a little more fresh. I particularly too, always when I'm looking in the case, especially like the salads at Trader Joe's, never pick the one in the front. Because you know that case, I mean, it's all open air. I always reach in the back and grab something because usually it tends to be fresher and, you know, the date is at a better place. Because they just load from the back, you know. So everything out in front, they need to get rid of right away. So be smart and, you know, go towards the back. So I've pulled off these little leaves, but I'm still going to run through with my knife and chop them down a little bit more finely. Okay, I got about 2 tablespoons in there. And the average on there was like 1 to 3 tablespoons. So I'm right in the middle. So I've got that. And I'm mixing that up. And then also everything salt, pepper, garlic. Now, salt, it's one of those things. Everybody has a different opinion on it. So I just kind of like do a little spattering across the top. And I keep going if my product is really thick. I maybe do another run. If it's just really thin, then there's just a nice little splattering across the top. I mean, that's how I measure how much salt usually works for me. But everybody's different, you know. I'm gonna actually salt the fish, and I am going to take also one of these leftover ends of the lemon. Just give a little squeeze on the fish itself. So hold on one sec. All right. So I've got the salmon here, and like I said, I'm gonna take a squeeze and just go, because I don't like to waste anything, so you can get a little more lemony flavor in there. Oops, I got some of the junk. Okay, and I'm gonna take a tiny little, just a little tiny bit of salt. And I'm staying away from pepper because I'm not really supposed to have it. It really makes me sneeze. I'm just gonna go a little tiny bit of any type of, this is what you call marination. So anytime you can do a little bit about that on its own, it's just gonna add more flavor. So, and then, so this is less, this amount of fish is probably less, it's less than a pound, it's more like a half pound. So I'm gonna take about half of this, and I may not even need all of that, and just, you know, just pat it around on that fish. Got the lemon in there, salmon, lemon, thyme, okay? All right, there you go. This is a big piece. If I wanted to, you know, I could cut it in half, you know, or make thirds out of that. For me, I'm probably just gonna bake this off, and then I'm just gonna have a little snack of it right out of the refrigerator cold. It's good for me too. So it lasts me a couple days. But that's gonna be my dinner tonight. So I'm gonna set that aside. And like I said, bake it off 350, about 20 minutes. I tend to like my everything underdone a little, towards the underdone rather than overdone. You know, especially fish, not necessarily poultry. I mean, you know, obviously, but so that's the rest of this. I'm gonna throw it in a Ziploc bag, and then the next time when I make this, it's already done. I just pull that out, defrost it, throw it on the salmon, bake it off. You could take that piece of salmon as well, you know, in the little sections, and I've wrapped them in parchment paper, you know, taped it up, and then I've thrown it in a Ziploc bag. That recipe freezes magnificently. So that's something you can make and be one of your go-tos that you have in your freezer. Like that's what I would do a lot of times, especially when my kids were young. I had girlfriends come over and we'd make a whole bunch of food, then we'd package it all up and split whatever the cost was, because I'd go and buy everything, you know, and it's just a frugal way to do things, and it just saves your time. So nice to know that I can just pull something out and not always have to do something, you know, we all know. So that was the salmon. Now we're gonna work on the chicken. Let me clean up my mess here. Get a few of these things out of the way. And this chicken dish is going to be a oh, I don't have it here. What did I do with it? Okay, well, I'm gonna have to wing it. I know I printed out that recipe for myself, but we're gonna go back to the blueprint. And this is a spicy southern pecan chicken, okay? So, now, I don't wanna use all tiger nut flour because it's pecan chicken, and I have some pecans. Here they are. Okay. I have some pecans, and I have a all right, this is a disaster. I just lost my lighting, but that's okay. I have a coffee grinder, okay? So we're gonna take this bad boy, and I'm gonna take these pecans. I have about, I'm gonna say, a good cup of the pecans in there, and there we go. I do this with spices too. Like I'll, when I'm gonna make some really cool curry, see it grinds up pretty well. I'm gonna put that in my little, clean out the bottom. The oils collect, and so a lot of it will stick towards the bottom. So there's a lot of oils in nuts, but they're good oils. They're really, really good for you. To get this out of the way. And so now, going back to my recipe blueprint, I put my lighting back up here so I don't look like I'm standing in the dark. Okay, this is a completely unprofessional organization here. I'm going as I go, and I think if you guys have been following me, you realize that I'm pretty, what you see is what you get. I'm figuring a lot of things out and progressing so that I can up my tech thing. But that's why I didn't start this till now anyway. And I thought, hey, I just got to jump in there and do it. I'm the real deal, and I'm just going to keep going and doing what I can. The value of all of this is maybe not my production quality here, but it's the concepts and the knowledge and the information that I'm just trying to give you guys. So again, please bear with me. All right, so I lost my recipe. I'm gonna have to. It's on my computer, but I'm not gonna spend the time to do that. So we're gonna go with the blueprint recipe. All right, so I don't know if I want to use. I've got half a cup. Probably a little more. It's more like 2/3 of the pecan, but that's okay. I'm gonna use the rest because we're, again, on the blueprint recipe, we're looking for 1 cup. Okay, 1 cup. All right, I'm gonna mix that in my bowl. Hang on. Okay. Just watch that. It's got a little bit of water still in there. Okay. Okay, so we got 1 cup of the dry mixture. And I'm gonna put a little bit of, I could put olive oil, I could put coconut oil, I could put butter. I used butter last time. I think I'm just gonna grab some olive oil. And I'm gonna add about a teaspoon or so of that in there, okay? And for my that's what's gonna, add a little more moisture too, like we talked about. Okay, now for my stock seasonings, okay, I don't think I want to, this isn't a garlicky kind of recipe, so I'm not really going to put, you know, some fresh garlic in there, but I'm going to put some zest. I'm going to put some orange zest in there now. So move over chicken. I'm going to, and again, I'm going to look for, I don't need to zest a whole orange, maybe half an orange. Now this recipe as well could be spicy, and maybe you don't like spicy, so you don't have to, you know, you can eliminate some of the spiciness if you want to. Okay, so I got in here, I want to get about a tablespoon. All right, so yeah, I've got about, you know, about a tablespoon. I'm gonna throw that in there. And I have my chicken. So these are breasts, okay? Now, that's a pretty good sized breast. You know, what I like that's really super convenient is anytime you cook a whole chicken breast, by the time the inner stuff is cooked, because it's not uniform, you know, if you notice, okay? I'll use this one here for a second, okay? All right, this breast here, it's thicker here than it is here. So for me, I kind of like, I'll either buy tenders because they're pretty much uniform, or I will cut up the chicken breast so it's kind of like tenders, and it just cooks more readily that way. So, you know, I'll take my chicken breast and I'm just gonna cut, sometimes a little on an angle, you know. So these are more like the size of tenders, okay? And it's less expensive too. Tenders are more expensive than chicken breast per se. Yeah, and then you got a few extra little weird pieces or whatever. Okay, you always have the tender that's hanging off of the breast. Just cut that off by itself. You know, there's another one. There's another little piece. And they're not all going to be totally uniform, but they're not going to be, I mean, look at the difference from this thickness here to this thickness here. You know, it's just by the time you cook the thick part all the way through, you know, the other's really dry. So here we go. I'm just making my own tenders. And that's easy for this recipe too, especially if you're gonna bread them. You know, it's a good deal. So I could take this and pat this in there just like I did the fish, but I don't know, I'm just kind of, I really want this to adhere, because sometimes when you got the tenders, you know, you got to pick them up. But fish is kind of different, a whole fillet. And so you want the breading to stick to it. So for me, I'm gonna wipe off here. I am going to, I've got my egg whites. Now you could use 2 eggs. Probably get away with, yeah, you want 2 eggs. So that's going to be about a half a cup, okay? Or you could use 2 whole eggs. For me, I can't do the egg yolk, so I'm going to go with half a cup. And I'm going to beat them. Oops, grab my spoon or my fork. Okay, I'm just going to get a little bit of, just a little tiny bit of fluff. I might add a little bit of salt in there. Again, the marination, and a little garlic. So I'm kind of pre-flavoring these chicken tenders. Okay, I'm gonna throw that in there. I'm gonna throw all this chicken in here and just mush it around, let it get coated. Egg whites, when they're processed like that, when they come, they do tend to be a lot more liquid, shall we say, than a regular egg white. So that's why I wanted to kind of whip them up and fluff them up a little bit. So anyway, I'm gonna set that aside for just a sec. Let me wash my hands real quick. We're gonna finish this recipe. I'm just talking. Anytime you touch raw, something like that is usually wiser to just wash your hands, not just use my little ghetto rag that I use sometimes. So I'm gonna take a sip here. All right, so I've got the chicken, and we have everything that we need in the mix, except for the seasoning. So the recipe, the blueprint recipe calls for, you know, as your showcase seasonings, your herbs and spices. Last time we used 2 herbs. This time we're just gonna do 2 spices. Okay, so we wanted to get the spicy in there. And the way that I like to put a little heat in here is chipotle chili pepper. So I can't do a lot of heat right now, so I'm gonna do, you know, 1 tablespoon, or excuse me, tablespoon. Oh my gosh, we'd be on fire. See, that was a slip. Okay. Usually, you know, with a spice, I want to do maybe 1 teaspoon. This is I'm really leery, so I'm gonna go about 1/2. Okay, I'm really leery of using too much, because if you put too much in there, especially chipotle, it's pretty strong, it's gonna ruin things. You know, coriander is a little more mellow, you know, but there are some like white pepper, super way more strong than black pepper, so you always want to use less than that. These are all kind of like the little tricks, but I'm gonna put some cinnamon in here. Okay, and yeah, I'm gonna put maybe a teaspoon of cinnamon in there. And this is just regular organic cinnamon. I think I got it, I don't know, Price Club, Costco, a while back. Now, if you've got like an Old Spice, wait a minute. I think my dad used to wear that. But if you have a spice that's been in your cabinet a little while, you can bring it back to life. I mean, if it's been in there since the 70s or whatever, never mind. Okay, but if you have one that's a couple years old, I mean, I could take this cinnamon and just kind of rub it a little bit, and that friction will bring the oils to the surface, and then it'll just be a little more potent. So if you have a seasoning that's lost its little edge a little bit, that's always like a cute little trick. That actually is a little older, that cinnamon, but I have some really good stuff that is from Madagascar. It's in storage. So anyway, so I just kind of wing it with what I got. So I'm also going to add some salt, a little bit of salt. Gonna skip the pepper. We got the chipotle pepper in there, so we don't even really need. I mean, if I wanted to put a little black pepper, I could too, but that's up to you. And then I'm gonna mix that around. I'm actually gonna use my hands. I use my hands a lot. You know, couldn't do that when I was a chef cooking for other people, but that's kind of part of the love too, I guess. I don't know. That's all the older cultures, they always, you know. So, all right, so we've got, let me get the other bacon dish. You know what? I'm just really gonna just put it on the same one. I'll bake these off together. Okay, the rest. So I'm gonna drop it in there. You know, just toss that bugger around. I'm gonna throw it on the sheet, because this is basically gonna cook around the same time. So 350 at 20 minutes or so, you know. And these are, oh, man, there's nice little snacks. This would be really good, you know, this chicken, if you, some collard greens with some, you know, sauteed onions and parsnips in there, a little bit of bacon, if you wanted to add that kind of flavor in there, you know, or stay with that without the bacon if you're more of the veggie type. I personally I can't do bacon. I can do turkey bacon. So I'll put a little turkey bacon in with those collard greens, and you know, and the flavor of the bacon would be the stock seasoning, you know, and the onions obviously too. You know, the collard green is the main event, and you know, you don't necessarily need seasonings all the time, you know. But anyway, here we go. So I've got these. So voila. Use your egg. It just forms like a coating, and then the bread sticks to it a little more readily. And I could have, like I said, I could have maybe got away without doing the egg on there. I have done that with chicken tenders before, and then the coating just kind of fell off because I just couldn't, I didn't have any eggs that were in the box before. I didn't have any, so I didn't use them. But that's a lovely thing for kids. You know, you can do something like that and do Italian breadcrumbs and some Parmesan and some basil and oregano in there, and kids will eat the daylights out of that. They, I mean, this is good for kids maybe without the chipotle pepper. Oh, that's what I wanted to show you. I could have, if I wanted to, substitute in some smoked paprika instead of the chipotle. It would be less spicy, but still have that good, you know, flavor, because it's made out of peppers as well. Paprika is basically, you know, they take red peppers and they dry them out, smoke them, and grind them up, you know. So you're getting the flavor, but you're not getting the heat. So that would be a good substitute for that. So I'm gonna, you know, throw these in the oven, and I forgot that in the recipe with the salmon, there is one thing that you can do. You can make like a mayonnaise, a spiced parsley mayonnaise. I have that on. I'm going to show it's on the recipe there. So I'm going to post these underneath. And thanks so much for bearing with me. I didn't have my regular kitchen today. Was kind of doing some other things, so I just kind of winging it here. And I just hope that you've learned, you know, picked up a few cool little tricks. And please comment, you know, give me some subscribes, some likes. I have somebody that I've taken on that's going to help me with some of this tech stuff, so I'll be getting it up to par. Anyway, I wish you all a good day, good night, and happy health and all that good stuff. All right, be good.